everyone. As you can see, I have changed my background a little bit, and that is because we have left the Dolomites and we are now in Brescia, Italy. And today's video actually is going to be a little bit of a different topic, and it comes because as I was wandering around Brescia, I realized that I now identified as someone who is confident with traveling, confident with navigating public transportation, navigating new cities, really just being able to move about with confidence. But this actually wasn't always the case. That's because I grew up in a tiny town in Canada that really didn't have any public transportation at all. I didn't explore outside of Canada or the US until I was 20, flying to study in Scotland for a year. Previously, I would have never identified as a traveler. Things like navigating public transportation were actually really, really scary for me because I didn't have the same understanding of the system as people my age typically would. New environments, new cultures, all of those felt very sort of terrifying for me at the time, and they were something that I had to overcome. So this has got me thinking about how my identity in business and how that influences my behavior on a day-to-day basis. In my introductory video, I mentioned how I've always been someone in the background. I was that studious teacher's pet who hated the spotlight, a complete introvert in unfamiliar environments, and the thought of presenting in front of people made me go as red as a tomato. Even when I was presenting in front of friends who were classmates, I was still bright red. One thing about me, though, is that I've always been a hard worker. I gave everything 100%, whether it was school, work, or personal projects. When I was working my 9 to 5, I was fortunate to be at a company that recognized hard work and rewarded it. So when an opportunity arose to take a key role in a major project, they gave me the chance. Suddenly, I went from working in the background to having to present in front of high-ranking company members. I had to consistently provide live cross-functional updates on large calls, lead training calls, and collaborate with senior executives. This shift was huge and admittedly quite terrifying. If I had maintained the identity that I couldn't present or lead, I never would have been able to succeed in that role. But instead, I made a choice. I decided to identify as someone who was capable, someone who belonged in that room. It wasn't easy, but that shift in identity, deciding that I was a successful team member who could actually exceed in this role and do a good job at it, allowed me to excel in ways that I hadn't imagined. This brings me to a concept from Atomic Habits by James Clear that has had a massive impact on me, and it's called identity-based habits. The book talks about how lasting change doesn't come from focusing on goals alone, but by shifting who you identify as. Clear writes, the most effective way to change your habits is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. And that's exactly what I did. I stopped identifying as someone who was too shy to present, and I became someone who could step into the spotlight and lead. That success opened the door to another opportunity, one that typically required 7 to 10 years of experience, while I only had 3 to 4 under my belt. This role pushed me even further out of my comfort zone. I had to visit new environments regularly, present to teams, and take charge of situations where, sometimes I didn't feel like I was truly the expert. But this is where I developed my coaching skills, working closely with retail teams to implement projects and improve their efficiency. I also never said no to an opportunity to learn and improve until I was truly confident in my skill set. In this role, I face pushback. Not everyone loves change. I made mistakes and I had to handle tough questions. And through it all, I managed to succeed. Again, it came down to identity. I had to embrace the mindset that I was someone who could succeed in that role, even though my fears were telling me otherwise. The shy girl I used to be would have turned down that opportunity, convinced that she wasn't good enough, convinced that she couldn't do it. I mean, imagine someone who thought that they were too shy to go into environments where they didn't know everyone in the environment, suddenly having to go into a new place on a weekly basis and work with new team members, sometimes launching slightly, contentious projects for people who weren't entirely bought into the concept. That would have been impossible for the girl who I was before. But I had already made that shift, embracing a new identity of someone who could thrive in these high pressure roles. I vividly remember sitting in my car on the very first day of that new role, parked outside of a retail store, shaking with nerves. I had to go in and introduce myself to that store and just, help the team members in their day-to-day roles. I could learn from them, see what they were doing so that I could start preparing to take on my role. It was a relatively simple ask, but my old identity was screaming at me to leave. Instead, I chose to go inside. I will admit I sat in my car for a minute or two, but I finally made the decision, this is ridiculous, you can do this, go inside and do it. That day turned out to be fantastic. The team was welcoming, and it became one of my favorite stores to work with. Had I stuck with my old identity, though, I never would have experienced that success. I would have stayed in my car and driven right back home. Clear discusses this exact point in Atomic Habits when he writes that your identity emerges out of habits. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. That day, my action of going inside and embracing the role cast a vote for the new me, the person who could take on challenges head on, the person who could succeed in this role. When I joined Niall in the online business world over 2 years ago, he had already built a name for himself in the market. It felt natural for him to be the face of our business while I worked behind the scenes, organizing projects, coordinating client fulfillment, and leading the team. I'd taken on coaching clients and recorded course content, but over time, I really felt myself slipping back into my old identity, the one who worked in the background out of the spotlight. This is the trap of old identities. They feel familiar and comfortable. That comfort draws us back to them. I wasn't identifying as the same ambitious, driven woman who had excelled in my corporate roles. I was comfortable, and that comfort was actually holding me back. As James Clear points out in Atomic Habits, it's a simple 2-step process. Decide the type of person you want to be, and then prove it to yourself with small wins. So who did I want to be? Did I want to be the person who stays behind the scenes, or did I want to be a successful business owner who shares her expertise with the world? If you're watching this video, I actually want you to ask yourself, who are you identifying as right now? Is your current identity going to get you where you want to go, or do you need to step into a new one? If you need to change, the first step is actually defining that new identity. Who is that person? What do they do every day? What kind of decisions do they make? Clear talks about casting small votes for your new identity through daily actions. If you want to identify as someone who is confident, start doing things that confident people do, even if it's in small ways. For me, posting my first YouTube video was one of those votes. It was terrifying, but it was a natural step in shifting my identity. So ask yourself, who do you want to become to achieve your goals? How do those people behave? How does that person that you want to identify as behave? And what actions can you take today to start becoming that person? This video is another example of me going for it. Just as I did when I stepped into those corporate roles and took actions to be successful in them, and when I joined Niall in our online business. I'm casting a vote for the new me, the one who is confident, who shares her knowledge with the world, and who doesn't hold back. So today, I really encourage you to take a look at your own life. What identity are you holding on to that's actually holding you back? And what small action can you take right now to start changing it? These are things to really, really consider, especially as you're preparing to launch your online business or as you're operating in your online business. I think in general, on a day-to-day lives, this can also be really, really key. If you want to hold yourself accountable, comment in the comments below who you want to identify as and what small votes you can take each day to achieve that identity.